Clara Valen adjusted the strap of her pale blue dress nervously as she stepped into the grand ballroom. The chandeliers hung like frozen constellations, casting light over rows of guests adorned in glittering gowns and tailored suits. Laughter and music filled the air, but Clara felt as though she were standing behind an invisible glass wall, able to see the life inside, but never part of it. She had come alone, as she always did to these gatherings. Invitations often came by mistake or out of courtesy, not desire. Her heart beat fast with a mixture of excitement and dread, yet as soon as she crossed the threshold, she noticed the quiet whispers and glances aimed her way. Some looked with polite curiosity, others with barely hidden disdain. Clara lowered her eyes, clutching her small clutch tightly, and moved toward the corner of the room where the shadow of a tall pillar offered some relief. She could hear the soft laughter of other women, their voices like a distant wind that carried both beauty and cruelty. She felt herself shrinking into the shadows, the weight of invisibility settling on her shoulders. For a moment, she wondered why she even came. The answer was simple: because she liked to see life in motion. She liked seeing happiness, even if she could never be part of it. Then she noticed him, Damien Rossetti. He was standing near the entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a suit that seemed to absorb the light around him. There was an air of danger about him, as though the room itself deferred to his presence. He was known as a man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure, a Mafia boss whose reputation carried stories of power, cunning, and secrecy. Yet beneath the shadow of his reputation, there was a magnetism Clara could not ignore. Their eyes met across the crowd. Damien's gaze was sharp, observing but not judging in the way most did. There was a subtle curiosity, almost amusement, as if he could see her more clearly than she saw herself. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She turned her head, pretending to adjust her dress. But the feeling of being observed clung to her like a shadow. Feeling the need for air, she slipped past the crowd and found herself on a terrace that overlooked the gardens. The moon cast silver light on the fountains, and the scent of blooming night jasmine floated on the breeze. Clara let out a soft sigh, leaning on the railing. The cool night air was a relief from the stifling warmth of the ballroom and the scrutiny of the crowd. Footsteps sounded softly behind her. Clara stiffened, her heart quickening. She did not need to turn to know who it was. "Beautiful night," came a voice that was deep, smooth, and quietly commanding. Clara turned, and there he was, Damien Rossetti, standing only a few feet away, the moonlight glinting off his dark hair. He did not smile, but his eyes held a strange softness, a curiosity that made her feel both seen and exposed. I needed some air," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Understandable," he replied, his tone calm, yet carrying an edge of authority that made her aware of his presence more keenly than any words could. He took a step closer, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with an unspoken tension. Clara's chest tightened. I don't mean to intrude," she said. "You're not intruding," Damien said simply. Then, leaning just slightly closer, he whispered, "Pretend I'm your date tonight." Clara's eyes widened. She blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. The words seemed reckless, yet there was a strange kindness hidden within them, a protection she could feel even without understanding why. I can't," she stammered, though her voice sounded smaller than she intended. "You can," he said, his tone steady, as if stating a fact rather than a suggestion. "And it will change everything tonight." The thrill of the unknown, the sharp spike of fear mixed with curiosity, made Clara's heart pound. After a long pause, she nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but only for tonight." Damien's lips curved just slightly, enough to hint at approval without breaking his composed expression. Then, as one might guide someone gently yet firmly, he extended his hand. Clara hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. The moment their fingers touched, a subtle warmth seemed to pass between them, something unspoken and quietly powerful. Together, they stepped back into the ballroom. Conversations paused slightly as they moved, the presence of Damien drawing attention as naturally as gravity pulls objects together. yet no one dared approach him. Clara felt herself walking in a strange new light. People who had ignored her now turned their heads, curiosity and surprise flickering in their eyes. Damien guided her to a quiet corner near the orchestra. The music swelled, soft violins intertwining with the gentle cadence of a piano. He offered a polite bow. "Shall we dance?" he asked. Clara blinked at the question, unsure if she was ready for this public scrutiny. Yet the sincerity in his eyes, the calm confidence, made her nod. They moved to the dance floor, and for a moment the noise of the room faded. It was just the two of them, the music carrying them in a slow, intimate rhythm. "You're different," Clara said softly after a while. "Most people, they don't see me. I see you," Damien said simply. There was no flattery in his voice, only a truth that struck her more deeply than any compliment could. "That alone makes you remarkable." Clara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. Why do you care?" "Because," he said, "I know what it is to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to have the world assume you are less than you are." She glanced up at him, searching his expression. Behind the cold reputation, she saw a glimpse of loneliness, a shadow that matched her own. In that moment, the walls around her heart seemed to shift. The dance ended, and Damien offered his arm, leading her to a balcony overlooking the gardens. The moonlight painted silver streaks across the flowers, and the fountains sparkled like liquid stars. Clara's breath caught, partly from the beauty and partly from the closeness she felt to this enigmatic man. "Who are you really?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Damien's gaze softened, but shadows lingered in his eyes. "Someone who has made mistakes," he said almost bitterly. "Someone who carries the weight of choices and debts no one can see. Someone cursed in ways that make connection difficult." Clara's heart tightened. She could sense the truth in his words, the burden that made him guarded yet compelling. "Cursed?" she echoed softly. "In a manner of speaking," he replied, turning to look out at the moonlit gardens. "But perhaps tonight, that curse can rest if only for a while." For a long moment, they stood together, silence stretching between them, filled with the weight of unspoken words. Clara felt herself drawn into the mystery of Damien, into the storm of danger, power, and vulnerability that surrounded him. The night was quiet, but the world inside the ballroom continued unabated. Laughter, music, and whispers of gossip reached them faintly. Yet out here it was only them, two souls who had found a fragile, fleeting connection in a world built on judgment and appearances. Suddenly, the moment was shattered by a subtle reminder of reality, a message delivered discreetly to Damien, a note or a whispered word that spoke of past debts, enemies, or the dangerous undercurrent that followed him everywhere. His expression hardened, the brief tenderness vanishing behind a wall of controlled intensity. Clara looked at him, sensing the storm that always seemed to lurk beneath his surface. "Are you in trouble?" she asked cautiously. He met her gaze, a flicker of something raw and unguarded passing through his eyes. "Always," he said quietly. Then, almost tenderly, he added, "But not tonight. Not while you are here." Clara felt a warmth bloom in her chest, equal parts fear and fascination. There was a pull she could not resist, a gravity in his presence that made her heart ache with longing. She realized in that moment that tonight would change everything. And yet, she also knew that stepping closer to Damien was stepping into a world of shadows, secrets, and danger. A world that could consume her if she was not careful. As the clock chimed the late hour, Damien leaned slightly closer. "You shouldn't care about me," he whispered, his voice low and raw. "But I can't stay away from you." Clara's breath caught. Her heart raced, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. And yet, she also knew that this encounter, magical as it was, carried the weight of unknown consequences. The moonlight shimmered on the terrace, the night air cool against her skin. In the silence that followed, Clara understood one truth above all. Nothing would ever be the same again. End of Part 1. The morning sun cast pale gold across the city, but Clara did not notice. Sleep had been elusive, her mind replaying the night over and over, the sound of music, the glittering ballroom, and Damien's deep, commanding gaze. She had never felt seen like that before, never felt someone look past her quiet exterior and see the person she truly was. Yet with the morning came reality. Damien Rossetti was a man with shadows trailing behind him, a life entangled in secrets and power she could barely comprehend. Clara wondered if the connection she had felt last night was real, or merely a fleeting moment in a world that thrived on appearances and danger. The sound of a soft knock broke her thoughts. She opened the door to find Damien standing there, impeccably dressed, as if no time had passed since last night. His dark eyes softened when they met hers. "Morning," he said, his voice low and steady. "I didn't expect to see you here so early." Clara swallowed nervously. "I couldn't stop thinking about last night. About you." He stepped inside, careful to close the door behind him. "And what did you think?" he asked, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Do I frighten you or intrigue you?" "Both," she admitted honestly. Her eyes met his, and she saw something fleeting in them, vulnerability. "I don't understand you, Damien, but I feel drawn to you. And it scares me," he nodded slowly. "That's fair. I'm complicated, dangerous in ways I cannot always explain. But I want to protect you, Clara, even if you do not yet trust me." Clara's heart ached at the sincerity in his words. It was not flattery or charm. This was a promise, a fragile thread connecting two people who had been invisible to the world. The day passed with an uneasy calm. Clara found herself walking the streets of the city, her thoughts constantly returning to Damien. Each passing hour drew her closer to the reality that last night was only the beginning, that the world he inhabited was darker, more dangerous, and far more fascinating than she had imagined. That evening, Damien invited her to his mansion, a towering structure that seemed to emerge from the night itself. Its walls were smooth black stone, windows tall and arched like the gates of an ancient cathedral. Clara felt a thrill of fear as she approached, yet also an undeniable pull toward the enigmatic man who had opened a door to a world she could not resist. Inside, the mansion was quiet, the shadows deep and deliberate. Candles flickered along the walls, casting moving shapes that danced like spirits in the corners. Damien led her to a room lined with books and velvet chairs, a fire crackling in the hearth. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, pouring 2 glasses of tea. He handed one to her, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, listening to the faint pop of the fire and the distant hum of the city outside. Clara studied him carefully. "Why are you so careful?" she asked quietly. "Why do you hide so much?" Damien's gaze softened, almost unbearably so. "Because the world demands it. I cannot afford to show weakness, not to anyone. And yet, when I am with you, I want to. I want to show you everything. But I am afraid that the world or my past will hurt you if you get too close." Clara's chest tightened. She realized that beneath the power and danger, he carried a loneliness that matched her own. "Then let me see," she whispered. "Even if only a little. Let me be someone you trust." He reached across the small table and took her hand in his. The warmth of his touch was electric, grounding her, yet setting her heart alight. "You are brave," he said quietly. Braver than most. Days turned into nights, and their connection deepened. They walked the gardens beneath the moonlight, shared quiet meals, and spoke of things neither had spoken aloud to another soul. Clara discovered that Damien's world was one of intricate shadows, enemies, debts, and unspoken obligations, but also a world where loyalty and honor carried immense weight. One night, as they walked along the terrace, Damien stopped and looked at her. "I have enemies," he said softly, almost reluctantly. "People who would harm you to get to me." Clara's fingers tightened around his. "Then I want to help. I may be ordinary, but I will not stand by while someone threatens you or us." Damien shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. You cannot protect yourself against the storms I live in, but your courage humbles me." And your presence? It heals a part of me I thought was lost forever. Clara's eyes welled with tears. She had always felt small, invisible, unworthy. Yet here, in the quiet intensity of Damien's gaze, she felt seen, truly seen. One evening, a shadow fell across their fragile peace. A messenger arrived with urgent news. Someone from Damien's past, a rival, had uncovered a secret that could destroy his empire and endanger Clara. The threat was subtle but insidious, a reminder that the world he lived in was unforgiving. Damien's jaw tightened as he read the note. Clara watched him, her heart hammering. "What is it?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. "Trouble," he said simply. "And it is unavoidable." She felt fear, yes, but also determination. "Then we face it together," she said firmly. He looked at her, a mixture of admiration and concern crossing his face. "You don't know what you are asking," he said. "You may regret this." "I may," she admitted. "But I will not turn away from you." "Not now." The next night, Damien guided her through the mansion, alert and cautious. Every corner seemed alive with shadows, every echo a potential threat. Yet Clara held on to him, their hands intertwined, each step a silent promise. They reached a high balcony overlooking the city. The lights below were tiny sparks against the dark, a reminder of life moving forward even in shadow. Damien looked at her, his expression unguarded for a rare moment. "You have changed something in me, Clara," he admitted. "Something I thought was lost. Hope. You make me want to be better, to face what I fear most. And yet, the world will test us." Clara's heart ached at the weight of his words. "Then we will face it," she said softly. "Together." The night air was cool, the wind carrying the scent of jasmine and the faint hum of the city. Damien drew her close, just close enough for her to feel the warmth of him against the chill of night. "I cannot promise safety," he whispered. "Only that I will not leave you." And Clara knew, with a certainty that scared and thrilled her, that she would not leave him either. The days that followed were a delicate dance of secrecy, trust, and growing affection. Damien began to let her into the corners of his world, introducing her to loyal allies, showing her the strength of his empire, and, most importantly, revealing the man beneath the shadow of the Mafia boss. Clara, in turn, revealed her own heart, the quiet strength, resilience, and courage she had hidden for so long. But as much as their bond grew, so did the tension. Damien's enemies were patient, waiting for any slip, any moment of weakness. And Clara realized that her presence, which had brought warmth and hope to Damien, also brought risk. One evening, as the city slept under a blanket of stars, Damien brought her to the highest tower of his mansion. They stood together, looking over the sprawling streets. The wind tugged at her hair, and the moonlight danced across his features. "There will be challenges," he said, his voice low. "People who wish to take what we have. Forces I cannot always control." Clara reached up and placed a hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. "Then let us be strong," she said. "Let us face the shadows together." He looked down at her, his dark eyes stormy and intense. "You may not understand," he said, "but choosing me is a risk of danger, of pain, and of losing yourself. And yet," he hesitated, then added softly, "I cannot imagine a life without you." Clara's breath caught. The weight of his words, the depth of feeling behind them, filled her with a strange mixture of fear and hope. She realized that love with Damien was not simple. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and powerful, but it was real. And just as she reached out to him, a sudden noise from below, a shadowy figure moving in the gardens, reminded them both that the world outside the mansion was relentless. The danger was real, immediate, and impossible to ignore. Damien's hand tightened around hers, his protective instinct flaring. "Stay close," he whispered. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Clara nodded, her heart pounding. For the first time, she understood what it meant to step into a world of shadows willingly, not out of fear, but out of love. The moon cast its silver light over the mansion, illuminating the two of them standing side by side, a human and a man of shadows, bound by trust, hope, and a fragile, fierce love. Cliffhanger. As the wind rustled through the gardens below, a figure moved silently, unseen by Damien and Clara. A threat from the past had arrived, and the night was far from over. In that moment, Clara realized that stepping into Damien's world meant danger, intrigue, and heartbreak, but also a love powerful enough to challenge even the darkest shadows.